Thanks, everyone. All right, fantastic. So, first, I just want to say thank you to everyone at Whale Fest, everyone who's organized and put this event on, all the donors, the sponsors, the volunteers. I think so. Do I just have to hold it very close? Okay. All right. Good to know. Thanks, everyone. Thank you to everyone who made Whale Fest happen. This is amazing. This is my first time participating in Whale Fest, but I've been coming to Whale Fest for 5 years now since since I moved to Monterey. My name is Jack Bartowski. I'm a Ph.D. student at Stanford University in the Goldbogen Lab. I'm also a research biologist with Cascadia Research Collective, which is a nonprofit research organization based up in Olympia, Washington, but does research on marine mammals all over the West Coast. I'm excited to talk to you today about insights into whale behavior that have been facilitated by our video camera tags. And we jokingly call this Whale TV, but that is basically what this presentation is going to be today. It's Whale TV. It's a compilation of our favorite clips and some highlights of ongoing work that's happening in our lab. So enjoy. After lunch, it's easy to fall asleep. Hopefully these clips will keep you awake. So over the last 15 years or so, the development and implementation of biologging devices that can also record video has led to numerous advances in our understanding of animal behavior, both in the terrestrial and marine environments. This video is from a biologger deployed on the back of a humpback whale in 2016 off South Africa. In 2011, these aggregations of humpback whales started showing up, forming supergroups, which is something between 20 to 200 individual humpback whales, all feeding in this tight aggregation like this on individual krill, these little dots in there. They're just gulping water, consuming those krill. So researchers from Stanford, University of Pretoria, and the South African government were interested in documenting these behaviors and understanding more what's going on. So they deployed these camera tags, and this video footage gives us incredible context into what the animals are doing underwater, while the actual sensors in the tag are monitoring, tracking the actual whale's behavior. So for a scientist like me, I am driven by a sense of wonder and curiosity about the natural world. And it's just so exciting every time we get a camera tag back, because you never know what you're going to see, right? You never know what's coming out of the murky depths. But also, it's like you're seeing something that no one has ever seen before. It's brand new stuff for the first time. When we deploy a tag on Monterey and it comes back in, we all huddle around the computer to click through the videos and see if there's anything cool in there. So our lab at Stanford University, we're based at Hopkins Marine Station, which is right down the road, is led by Jeremy Goldbogen, the Goldbogen Lab. Jeremy, I believe he started his lab in 2014 or 15, so he's been here for almost a decade. And we study whale physiology. Basically, we study the energetic costs and the energetic gain of marine mammals out in the ocean. We focus on the largest marine mammals, cetaceans, or rorquals, lunge-feeding whales, trying to understand how these animals have adapted to the unique ecosystem of the ocean in order to become the largest animals to ever exist. A little bit about me. So yes, I grew up in Boston, and then I attended UMass Boston. And I got my first taste of science at a field station, UMass Boston's field station on a Nantucket, studying spiders. We'd go out at night and we'd catch these crazy spiders, and then in the lab the next day we'd study all sorts of stuff about their biology. I loved it. I spent as much time at the field station as I could, and I got attracted to the pinnipeds out there and studying the anthropogenic impacts like entanglement and also microplastic ingestion in their stomach and their feces, which if you came to Matt's talk earlier, you know the importance of feces. In 2020, I moved here to do a master's on humpback whale acoustics at Moss Landing Marine Labs. The COVID pandemic hit, and that changed the trajectory of my master's a little bit, but I was able to start working with Cascadia Research Collective and getting exposed to a lot of these animals in the field here on the West Coast. And then recently, a couple years ago, I started my PhD research, which will be focused on blue whale foraging ecology, building on some of the work that's been done in our lab previously, specifically focusing on the blue whale because as the largest animal to ever exist, it's this physiological marvel. It's achieved these monstrous sizes by feeding on tiny individual krill, like less than 1% of 1% of its body mass. It's really incredible. So I'm seeking to build upon Dave's work. I'm going to use some clips from Dave's work in 2019 studying blue whale supergroups here around Monterey Bay to show you how we put these tags on the animals. The best way to do that is with the bird's eye view. Drones are a really important piece of technology that we use as well, and the video that the drones collect is great. But so as we size up the blue whales out on the ocean, it takes a really skilled team of a driver and a tagger to assess the whale's behavior and determine if it's conducive for an approach to tag. Once we've determined that the whale's behavior is conducive, we approach it from behind like this, timing the breaths at the surface to get close enough with our 5-meter pole to press the tag onto the back of the animal. It's a really coordinated approach that takes a lot of skill and a lot of experience. Here's another view of it from the boat. So this is Dr. Dave Cade, an alum from our lab and a current research associate with our lab, up on the bow pulpit, holding our 5-meter pole that's carbon fiber, and you see the flex there. That's really important for holding that tag in the holder as we motor along the ocean. There's a lot of bumps. So having a little give is great. Behind Dave is Dr. Will Goff, another alum from our lab, holding our biopsy crossbow with our biopsy dart. At the end of that dart is a hollow, it's like 3 centimeters long tube of metal that the crossbow will shoot into the blubber of the animal. It will take a small chunk of skin and blubber. If you look really close at the tip of this dart, when it hits the whale, you actually see that piece of blubber holding into the biopsy dart. So this approach takes a lot of skill, takes a lot of experience, and it takes a lot of good timing. Dave, the tagger, and I think, I wasn't sure who's driving on this one, either James or John Kalmakidis, they have headsets in their helmets that they use to talk to each other. You watch the biopsy dart, yeah, you see the little helicopter of blubber. And then Will's a great scientist. Will is watching his dart because you got to keep eyes on your dart. You can really easily lose that dart at sea if you're not watching it. So Will is well trained. We recovered that dart, we got that sample. From that sample, we can look at things like the sex of the animal and also individual health and kind of scale that up to population level health if we collect enough samples. So yeah, that is how we get the tags on the animals. It takes a sophisticated team with a lot of experience and a lot of communication. And those headsets that I was just talking about in the helmets really, really help. I mean, technology makes this so much easier. I can't imagine trying to scream back to each other over the wind. Sometimes we do that when I forget to charge the Bluetooth headsets, and it's really challenging. The success of getting tags on can be impacted. So these technological developments help a ton. One technological development that our lab has been working on is deploying tags on these animals from drones. And this is a procedure that was pioneered by Ocean Alliance, a group on the East Coast of the United States. But basically, yeah, using these new technologies to drop that tag on the back of the whale and get those suction cups to stick. So this is that tag that you just saw in that video that just fell onto that side of that humpback whale. You might notice that I stopped flying forward. I'll try to play that clip again. This was my first successful one after a few attempts, but I got nervous and I stopped flying forward, and the tag kind of fell a little wonky and went down to the side. So with this approach, you have a little less control over where on the body the tag is going, the orientation of that camera, what you're looking at, but you disturb the animal less, right? You saw that boat, there's a higher speed approach. Different tactics have different results, right? Depending on what your research questions are, you might use one technique or the other. But new technologies are really changing the game, and we're trying to explore all these new techs to answer questions as best we can. Once these tags are on these animals, they're collecting data streams that look like this. This is kind of the finished product that happens with the video after we've processed all the data. This is a camera tag on a blue whale filming another blue whale lunging on krill together. And what this data is showing here is the data from an IMU, an inertial measurement unit inside the tag. It's using accelerometers, gyroscopes, and magnetometers, much like your smartwatch or your cell phone, to track the orientation of the animal. There's also pressure sensors to measure depth, and there's a unique relationship between sort of the jiggle, the shake of the tag, and the speed of the animal that we can use to measure the speed, which is this green line down here. And you'll notice this green line plummets as soon as that whale opens its mouth to feed. And look at the timing of the other whale. They're feeding in like near perfect synchrony. right? And so with the IMU data and the camera data, we can start to explore cool questions about their behavior. Now we're measuring stuff about this individual whale, we're observing things from other whales, and we're creating new future questions. And so someone like James Fallbush, a lab alum and a research associate in our lab, someday he's gonna, he's gonna tell us how these paired whales, what they're doing, what it means, how they're interacting together as we get more data streams of paired animals doing synchronous behavior. It's a really cool thing. Some other work from our lab, Anna Krylova, a master's student who got her master's degree from Northeastern, using like 40 plus tags from our data set to look at multi-species foraging aggregations. And what that is, as you'll see in a second, you might start seeing on the right, sea lions, birds of many different species, sometimes dolphins, all feeding together on one tight bait ball. And basically what Anna's work is showing is that animals that are foraging in these multi-species aggregations on these huge prey patches, pretty soon you'll see a lunge and then another whale. Whoa. These animals are foraging more efficiently than animals not foraging in these aggregations. Essentially what we think about when we're measuring efficiency, energy in versus energy out, right? That's what our lab studies as physiologists. These guys are getting more energy in for less energy out, essentially, right? They're more efficient than whales not in those groups. Yeah, and so these camera tags allow us to like explore this and be able to classify that this is one of these animals foraging in a multi-species aggregation, right? And Anna's work is really amazing. That work is soon to be published. It's in review right now. And if you were at Matt's talk, you might have saw this clip earlier, but this is one of my favorite ones because compared to the other clip where seemingly everyone is enjoying the buffet and there's plenty of food for everyone, this clip, like this humpback whale, seems a little bit like a bully to me, but I'm not quite sure. Those common dolphins that were bow riding off its nose, maybe they were playing, maybe they were like trying to cue it, but essentially you can see from this head shake and these squiggles here, this whale is beating its tail really hard. It's increasing its speed basically to the max that we're measuring as it's targeting this way smaller bait ball that all these dolphins are eating, and then it just eats the whole thing. It's like, how did the dolphins benefit from that? But maybe they did. Maybe there's something going on that I don't understand. But these are the kind of things we observe in these tags, camera tags that lead to so many more questions that we just want to continue exploring. Hannah Clayton is the other PhD candidate, or the only PhD candidate in this lab. I take my candidacy exams in about 6 weeks. I'm still a student, technically. So Hannah is our PhD candidate studying gray whales and using these camera tags in a really interesting way, where there's a subpopulation of gray whales up in the Puget Sound called the Sounders, if anyone's ever heard of the Sounders. They're really interesting. They do this benthic foraging like all gray whales, but they do it in a really unique environment on a really unique prey type, which are these ghost shrimp, these long, chunky pink things over on the right that live in these burrows that when you're not looking at the sediment plumes, you might see those burrows in there. Basically, these sounders are feeding in incredibly shallow water of only 3 meters here on our depth axis. And it's really hard to understand the energy in, what they're actually getting, right? And for a long time, it wasn't really understood what they're foraging on, what's happening over here. Some of the camera data that's come out of this has actually helped us understand this behavior more and know what's happening. A lot of times up in Washington, Cascadia will get calls about whales stuck in the mud or an entangled whale, a whale in distress. It's just a sounder just feeding in 2 meters of water, just like totally fine. It's okay. It knows what it's doing. But it's an interesting, like weird, abnormal behavior that these camera tags are shedding a lot of insight on. And Hannah's work is great. In addition to the foraging stuff, these camera tags show us beautiful shots of the Puget Sound, but also really cool social interactions. And the social stuff is some of my favorite stuff, where you just get like curious lumbering whales just drifting into the frame, coming to check out the tag, but more likely some sort of social interaction between these animals, which we observe quite a bit while out on the boat. These guys touching and rubbing. These animals, like us, are mammals. Like a lot of mammals, terrestrial and marine, they have a social structure and social interactions with each other. They have a form of communication in various ways, right? it's so hard to study social structure in these animals for so many different reasons. And so some of these insights give us just glimpses into like what these interactions look like, which we can then start hypothesizing what they might be for, the function, what the information being conveyed between individuals is. Is this, maybe a reproductive behavior? We don't really know. We're trying to figure these things out. And sometimes the insights we get from tags is really great. Sometimes the whales bump our tags and just like knock them off the animal, slide them all over. Yeah, sometimes the bumping is not great. There's a great shot of the breath. Some of the other cool social interactions that we observe, sometimes with the odontocetes, who have really cool social structure that's been studied a little bit more, we see some really interesting stuff. These are orcas up off Norway. This is one of my favorite clips because it always seems like the other orcas in this pod come to check out the new hardware that their buddy just acquired. They're like, whoa, look at your jewelry. This is a tag, like the gray whale tag you just saw. It has a forward front-facing camera and a backward-facing camera. And our tags have changed a little bit over the years. This was an older tag we had that has sort of a split-eye vision. It's looking that way and it's looking that way. And the idea was like the whale's eyes are on either side of its head. We kind of like looking off in two different directions. Then there's this forward and backward-facing camera. Most of our tags nowadays that we use are a single camera with a really wide lens that shoot great 4K video. But the tech is updating quite rapidly, and the things that we can observe are expanding quite a bit. I always love this orca video. A lot of these clips are just my favorites that I then had to figure out a reason why I included them in the talk. And so this is my best attempt to do this. Actually, this is my all-time favorite clip. So the unique thing about this video data is that like it allows us to see the ocean from the whale's perspective, right? This is a humpback whale right here in Monterey Bay, which you'll see at the end of this video, the iconic Moss Landing power plant towers. Part of why it's my favorite clip is because this is what these whales are experiencing in the ocean. And this is just, it gives you the perfect taste of that. This whale is cruising through this minefield of sea nettles while hundreds of sea lions just sort of glide through the rich, green, productive waters of Monterey Bay. And this whale is actually moving quite fast. You see this skin that's shedding off the animal, flapping with the forward motion of the animal. It is fluking and sort of increasing its speed throughout this. And I don't really know what it's doing. It's traveling somewhere, probably. It's moving in a direct line, like pretty fast. It probably received some cue from some other humpback whale or some other thing in the ecosystem that there's food in the direction it's heading, given what they do in Moss Landing, or in Monterey, I should say. Here come the towers. Oh, yeah, I love that one. Good, I'm glad you guys like that one too. That one's one of my favorite. When I was a kid, like if you asked me what superpower I wanted, I always said I wanted to look through the water and see the animals, because I would go on my uncle's fishing boats and be so bored, just like, seeing nothing. And I always wanted to see what was down there, and I feel like this clip is that. So I love that one. Sometimes the whales record us. This is a minke whale in Antarctica. That's Dr. Cade there waving to the camera. That's our research grade echo sounder that I will be using for a lot of my PhD work. That's how we measure some of the energy in, right? We need to know the biomass in the water. As that whale expands its pleats and gulps a ton of water, we have to calculate how much energy was in that volume of water that you just gulped down. It's a really hard thing to do, but that piece of equipment helps us do it. That's a really friendly minke whale in the Antarctic. This is a pretty lazy humpback whale in the Antarctic. And when I was looking for clips of whales filming the researchers, everything I found was in the Antarctic. And I think it's mainly because those animals generally experience less overall disturbance from boat traffic. Antarctica, this is the western Antarctic Peninsula where both of those clips were just filmed, in some of the really rich bays that hold a lot of krill and a lot of whales. That whale's also wearing a tag, but it did not have a camera. These whales just relax and rest at the surface like this. They'll stay logging and sitting there. We did an expedition in 2025 to the western Antarctic Peninsula where we deployed heart rate tags on humpback whales down there, which was a project of a postdoc in our lab, Dr. Blauis. and recorded some of the first humpback whale heart rate data down there. But we were able to do that because those whales were dead asleep, and we drifted right up to them and were able to just discuss where we wanted to place that tag. Nowhere else in the world you're able to do that. So animals don't really let you get that close to them. Oh, this is a great one. So I always wondered about the perspective of what a whale breach looks like from the whale's view. This is what it looks like. Splash. Now this is a calf that breaches 13 times in a row. Each one of those green spikes is that whale just continually launching itself out of the water, splashing back down, having a good time. And if you've ever gone on a whale watch in Monterey Bay with one of our companies here, you may have seen a breaching whale, or you've seen videos of multiple repeated breaches. This is just one of those videos that I love because it just shows a joy. What I think of, I'm anthropomorphizing here, right? Attributing some human characteristics to this non-human animal. It's just a happy little calf who's just jumping out of the water. That's sort of what I think of, and it really sort of paints a fun picture, I think, as to what's going on. It also provides this really unique perspective of breaching whales. What we got next? Oh. So sometimes we accidentally record, hitchhikers. These whales have a lot of organisms just living on them, right? Whole ecosystems, animals that'll live their whole life, or most of their life, on the back of this whale, including like these acorn barnacles that were deployed right in front of the calf to show us like how they live their life. That's a filter feeder, just extending, what it needs to catch its food. Just ride in the back of the whale. Oh, you're going out of the water, like no problem. You'll be fine. And if you've seen humpback whales in this bay, you've maybe seen them covered in barnacles before. And there's gooseneck barnacles that can grow, long dangly things hanging off of them. A lot of different organisms can survive on these animals. Whale lice as well. I have a clip that shows some whale lice coming up in a bit. But these are sort of some of the opportunistic observations that we make that lead to more questions. And I hammer that point a lot because it's sort of how this camera data set gets built out. We deploy these tags for a specific research question in mind, right? We want to collect data to answer that question. Sometimes we get data totally unrelated to that question, a totally novel observation or something else that leads to other hypotheses. But often we still have to satisfy the original research question because that's what you were funded to do. So it can result in all of these amazing observations that live in this data set that we don't know about, including observations of other non-whales. Okay, so this is a clip from the tag perspective. I put this towards the end of the talk because this one makes me a little dizzy. So right now the tag's upside down. We do that in the holder so it doesn't fall out when we're bouncing along. You'll see at the last second, the tagger here flips the tag over and plops it on the side of a humpback whale. But you'll notice something about the skin of this whale, which is that it's a little chunky and not great. And this tag never really settles, it just keeps sliding. It was deployed on the left side of this humpback whale, and you'll see sometimes these suction cups don't stick all that well. And the force of this animal, the tag can just slide way down the body. Now we're on the left side underneath, looking at the genital slits in front of us. This tag's gonna keep going. It just wrapped around underneath to the right side of the animal, and pretty soon it's gonna come to rest on top of the fluke and just ride there for a long time. See these little undulations in the depth profile? That's the whale's fluke just going up and down. This one makes me dizzy as we just watch the whale's fluke go. This is what the fluke does. One of the really cool things that Jeremy Goldbogen, our PI, pointed out to me when we were looking at that clip. Oh, shoot. Oh, not that one. Matt knows what clip is coming next. One of the really cool things that is there is basically, these animals use huge locomotor muscles that are, a little bit forward on the body of where that tag is, forward on the caudal peduncle, and huge tendons and ligaments that control those and connect those. And you can see them like in the whale's body, like tensing and relaxing as that whale flukes. It's incredible. The video makes me dizzy though, and it's hard to watch. Okay, so sometimes our tags slide and they eventually come to rest and we observe some really incredible things that can sometimes also be a little gross, like a whale bowel movement. So our tag, that other tag slid past the genital slit. This tag came to rest at the genital slit. Yeah, you're seeing gas bubbles and you're also seeing a red cloud. That red cloud is fecal matter from a fin whale. I can tell you that that fin whale has been eating krill because of how red that feces is, which is pretty incredible. Fin whales also feed on fish, and when they're feeding on fish, their poop looks a little bit different. But basically, the sheer volume of feces coming out of this animal is really staggering, and this is one bowel movement. It is incredible. This is an infamous clip in our repository of clips, but it's really, really informative. And actually, when we're out at sea, if we're fortunate enough to see a whale, bowel movement, and if it's in good enough shape that we can collect it, then I will put my gloves on and I will grab a jar and I will collect as much of that feces as I can. This is a fin whale that was fish feeding, and you can notice the slightly different color in the feces there. But if we collect the krill feces, well, one of the things I'm interested in for my research is trying to quantify that energy in component. I need to know the caloric value of the krill that my blue whale is gulping, right? So if I grab my blue whale's fecal matter, and if I sift through it to find individual krill mouth parts, I can measure the total mouth, the length of the mouth part. I can use those spikes up there to tell you what species it is as well. And then I can assess, what the sort of prey landscape that animal was feeding on to accurately quantify energy in. It's really, it's really opportunistic. You cannot, it's not like walking your dog and like bringing a doggy bag to pick up after. It's like these are opportunistic sample collections that we can't rely on. But over the years of doing this research, Cascadia has been operating for over 45 years now. Jeremy has been studying whales for over 2 decades. There's a great repository of fecal samples, and we're sort of further understanding the utility of them. Matt Savoca's work is using them to look at microplastic concentrations in these animals and sort of understand how much plastic might be moving through these animals and where it's coming from, the prey or the water. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff that you can learn from the feces. Okay, to wrap up, I'm going to use a couple of our recent tag deployments to tell a little story here. So this clip is sped up 7 times because I wanted to show these whale lice moving around. They move really slow at normal speed. But this whale, he's making a beeline for this shedding skin, and then he just hangs out there for a while. And there's like a dozen more of these whale lice forward up on the head of the whale and on the sides that are also kind of moving around. They're super interesting, interesting little critters. They're on like all whales. They're not that detrimental to the animal. It's probably it's a great deal for the whale lice. It's probably not a great deal for the whale, but it doesn't hurt them all that much. But it's super interesting. And you can see this skin, flaking off the animal. This was a tag we deployed on a humpback whale in June 2025 here in Monterey Bay. And we got the tag back and we processed the data. We were looking through the videos. We were seeing a lot of really cool stuff. And then we saw these, this blue line is our depth profile here. We saw in our depth profile these dead flat depth lines at depth, which were really interesting to us because usually, the whales go down, they're swimming all through the water column, their depth is changing dynamically. So we thought that was really interesting. We go to the video, and this is what we see. See the whale's orientation here. It just rolled. The tag's on its back. That's the sea floor. And the whale buries that tag in the sea floor as it seemingly just exfoliates its back in the water or in the sand, plowing forward through that sand there, shedding those whale lice off its back, getting those acorn barnacles off its back, trying to remove some of that skin. So this whale did this behavior 4 times on this tag deployment. It did like 3 in a row. It did this one here and this one in the video and then another one back to back to back. Later on at night, this whale went down to the bottom and laid on the bottom for 9.5 minutes, basically totally motionless, just didn't move at all. Wasn't moving forward, wasn't rolling, wasn't doing anything. I don't really know what it was doing, right? Maybe it was asleep. Who knows? It's really interesting. But so we observed this and we thought, whoa, that's super cool. We talked to Dr. Dave Cade in our lab, who's looked through more video camera data than probably anyone alive. And he was like, oh yeah, that's in a lot of our data set. So Ashley Blauis and I looked through our video camera data set to see where we had documented video interactions of humpback whales going down and interacting with the sea floor, sort of doing that exfoliating behavior or that resting behavior. And this is sort of a map of our six different tag deployments. One of them was the same whale across 2 different years. that came back into Monterey Bay, dove down, went down to the seafloor and interacted with it like that. And one of our, we expanded and looked at all of our animals. This is a behavior that's been seen before, a lot on the breeding grounds. There was an observation in Australia. This is actually Hawaii from our data set and in collaboration with Lars Bader out at Hawaii. That's a calf. Who knows what it's doing there? It's not feeding, but it's just sort of gulping some water, maybe swishing its baleen. It's also just being a calf. But basically, this is an escort that's rolling around in the sand there on the breeding ground. I love this clip. I showed it to Ashley. She did not love it. I love these mackerel scad coming to exfoliate this whale. This whale is at the spa. If you've ever gone and gotten the fish eating the dead skin off your feet treatment, this is basically that. And then you get a nice sand scrub to boot. It's pretty awesome. This is the whale dream, right? So these animals are interacting with the seafloor a lot, is my point. And we know that because of the camera data that we have in our repository. Once we observed it on a recent tag and we were able to mine our old data to look for it, we actually found it quite a bit. And the calf was also interacting with the seafloor in this video and another one. That calf was also tagged. That's the mom. She was not tagged, but she was also rolling around on the seafloor, filmed on video from the escort. So eventually these suction cups have to pop off. The tag floats to the surface with this VHF pinger. We go out on our boat and listen. Sometimes we record the whales waving goodbye to us when they go. It's very kind of them. Adios. Until next time. And that is sort of a dive into our whale highlights. That's a bunch of the clips we have. Thank you all. We have some time for questions. We got 15 minutes for questions. Right. Yeah. That's a great question. Typically, anywhere from great call, Mary Alice. The question was, how long do these suction cups stay on, and why do they typically come off? Are they pulling? Is it because of skin shedding or something else? Typically, these tags with our newest version of the suction cup, because we're always iterating, anywhere from 6 to 18 hours is a reasonable expectation. You'll get shorter than that. Depending on the whale's behavior and the environment, you'll get longer than that. If you tag one of those sleepy humpback whales in Antarctica, this tag could stay on for 80 hours. I think 80-something hours is our record for a suction cup deployed tag on a lazy humpback down in Antarctica. Typically, they come off just because they lose suction. We often don't recover them with skin in the cups. Sometimes we do, or skin bunched up around the cups if it slides and pulls skin. But yeah, mostly they just lose suction. As a test, we stick them to the glass window in our lab and see how long they just stay stuck to the window. And it's 3 or 4 hours or something. Yeah. Oh boy. Oh, that's a great question. And oh yeah, I do. Okay, we get the skin in the blubber. I'm learning. The skin in the blubber, how do we analyze that? Not my expertise, so I can give you a overview. Yeah, basically they're looking for markers in that blubber that will tell if it's a male or a female, depending on hormones that are being produced. Males produce testosterone, right, and females produce progesterone. We can look at different levels of that in the tissue to sort of determine the sex of different animals. And then if you have specific questions, if you want to know how stressed out the animal is, you can look at something like cortisol, right? We produce cortisol. I'm stressed standing in front of all these people and talking. My cortisol levels are probably a little high right now. And that's something that can be measured in the whales too, and various studies have looked at that related to ship noise, exposure, all those sorts of things. I totally don't. I talked to Logan Paulin, who's a researcher at UC Santa Cruz, and I asked him to do all that for me because he's an expert in that. Yeah, it's something I farm out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're doing something. They do. Yep, they do. They have Oh shoot, I'm so bad at that. Sorry. The question was, the comment was, think the exfoliating whales might be trying to shed some lice. And then, does our tags have acoustic recording capabilities? These tags do have acoustic recording capabilities across a wide range of frequency bands that we can control depending on the animal we want to study. Large whales produce low frequency vocalizations. We don't need as much high sampling rate to detect that. We can save ourselves some memory storage by not recording those high frequencies. If you want to record something like a dolphin or a porpoise, you got to go really high, and that's going to take a lot of memory. In the back. Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's a good question. Yes. Shoot. One of these days I'll get it. The question was the slide I showed of the whales laying down. Go to that map. How do I do that? There you go. Do these whales have their spots, quote unquote? Not really, I don't think, but it's a really low sample size and it's hard to say. These different colored dots relate to different individuals. This pink dot did it 10 different times on one tag deployment, spanning from like, 8 a.m. into like 3 a.m. basically. And you can see the track of this whale, where this whale went when it did it, right? It did it first. This was number 1 and this was 10. So it clearly did it over a wide range of habitats. And then this was the animal in 2025 where it did 3 in a row. And then like 6 hours later, it did 1 more. So seemingly no, seemingly they just want sand, but I really don't know. It's more an observation of the behavior and like speculating about why they're doing it. But given that they move a little bit, maybe not. Maybe it's more they just need sediment. Yes. Yeah. Good question. Quite a range. Yeah. It ranged from like 20 meters to 90 meters in depth of where we observe this, and maybe something to do with like they need to visually assess that they're about to engage with sand and not rock or mud or something else that they don't want to rub around in, right? So maybe some relationship like that. But also, our camera tags don't um, we program them to stop recording at a certain light level because you can't see anything when it's dark and deep in the ocean, right? So we don't have any recordings of them doing it deeper than like 140 because our cameras shut off. So yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, some folks have. Um, oh shoot, yeah, the question. Thanks for reminding me. The question was, have we used other types of imaging like thermal? Um, and the answer is yes, we have. People have been putting thermal cameras on, thermal sensors on drones to get an aerial view of thermal, and then also using like handheld FLIR cameras to sort of, yeah, do the side profile as well. Trying to measure various things like maybe the volume of breath that is being exhaled to try to calculate things like tidal volume, the volume of the air that the whale's inhaling, or like heat venting on these animals. They have great heat retention through their blubber. They actually need to get rid of heat, and so they have to find ways to dump it. With a thermal camera looking at the body, we can maybe look at that. Right here. Oh. Yeah. The units for what? The light. That's a great question. I actually don't know. Maybe lumens, but I'm not 100% sure. It's something on the order. I know when it gets set, it gets set at like 15,000 something. So yeah, 1 to 15,000 something. Yeah, yeah. Did I repeat the question? I forgot. Sorry. Oh man, I'm gonna do it this time. Yeah. Are the barnacle? The question. Sorry, I was so excited to repeat the question. I cut you off. Are the barnacles harmful to the whale? Like ticks, maybe. Yeah, it's a great question. I don't really know. I could speculate a little bit for you. I don't think so because they're so small and they're just sort of along for the ride. Realistically, I think that whale can just go down and roll around in the sand and shed it whenever it wants to. People who've spent a lot of time out on the water on these whale watching boats here in the bay, sometimes you see the tail stalks of these animals just loaded up with stuff on them. And these animals have evolved really sleek, elegant body forms to be as hydrodynamic as possible to reduce the energetic cost of having to swim, right? It's easy for me to move through air. It takes more energy to move through water. Um, if you're adding drag with like hundreds of pounds of barnacles on you, it's not good. So in that sense, it might be increasing their energetic cost of drag and stuff like that. But it's probably a small additional load given their body size and all that sort of stuff. And probably they can go shed them when they want to with those sort of seemingly exfoliating behaviors. Anyone else? One more. Yes. Are we looking at all humpback whales right now on this map? Yes, we are looking at all humpback whales right now on this map. Asked and answered. Yeah, the question was, with the whale feces we've collected, have we looked at like the microbiome and how that maybe compares whale to whale or year to year? As far as I know, no, but I do not know much about microbiomes. With the samples that we have and that we're using with, we are not looking at that. That might be a really cool thing to look at. Part of what's hard about sort of the sample collection that we do, because it's so opportunistic, that fecal sample is often sitting in a jar, just like floating in some seawater, because that's the coldest thing I have available to me when I'm out on the boat. So sometimes how we collect and store these samples matters for stuff like that, and I don't know, but it's not something that we're actively doing. It would be cool to compare. Maybe there's some health indicators in there. Yeah, so the question was, how has climate change and warming ocean waters affect the migration patterns of whales? That is a great question and something that I could probably spend my career researching. I don't think we have a long enough data record to assess how migratory pathways may have shifted relative to climate change at this stage. I think we can hypothesize some things that likely as climate change impacts the feeding grounds of these animals, we'll see changes in migratory pathways as they have to adapt to new foraging grounds. You can take the gray whales currently, for example, as their Arctic foraging grounds are starting to kind of collapse and not be able to sustain the population. You're seeing whales show up in new places like San Francisco Bay, looking for new food to try to, sustain themselves. And then they're encountering new obstacles like ships and human activity that they're not used to. So I think that's where we'll probably see some of the impacts of climate change, less on the migratory pathways and more the destinations of where those whales are ending up. Yeah, that's a very good question. And the question was, do the whales mind that we are approaching them and slapping this tag on the back of them? Um, in a short word, yes, they do mind. We observe and note reactions of our close approaches to these animals, and typically, it's something like we call it a flinch. The whale's like, whoa, what was that? And it throws its tail maybe. Sometimes, it'll do like a fast surface dive down. So we note these reactions and sort of keep track of them. Um, from the data, I think we've deployed over 500, maybe over 600 tags now. We sort of assess the behavior of the animal as soon as we put a tag on it to see, how quickly do you go back to quote unquote normal like behaviors. And it really seems like there's not much of effect at all. Maybe 10 minutes, within 10 minutes of us tagging that animal, it's right back to its normal behavior. Typically, maybe it can go to 30 minutes or so, depending on the species of animal and the behavior. Sometimes we tag blue whales and it's like we never even approach them. They're just like right doing their own thing. Yeah. That's a really good question. Yes, that's such a good follow-up question. The question was, is there a place where you can go to watch these videos as a member of the general public. And there are some of these videos up on YouTube in various, attached to our lab, Stanford University and the Goldbogen lab, that sort of show some of the highlights. Some of the clips I've shown you today and a lot of other clips I didn't have time to show you today are available on YouTube. There's one really cool video that's up on YouTube that I love. It is a 360 camera was built into one of these tags, deployed on the back of a whale, and with a VR headset, you can watch that video on YouTube in your VR headset, and it's basically like you're underwater, just like looking 360 all around where this whale is, what it's doing. That early video I showed you where there's just whales everywhere, right? There's this whale in Monterey Bay with the 360 camera, and you can look wherever you want to go. Those VR headsets, you can get like there's like Google Box or something. It's like $10, a $10 cardboard box you can get. And that alone, that with your smartphone, you can watch that video. Last one. What do we got? Great question. Average cost of the tags, anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. Yes, but they are reusable, which is great. You got to go out to sea and get it, right? It pops off the animal, it floats up, we go back, we collect the data, and then we recharge it, reprogram it, do everything like that. But they are not cheap. They're really high-tech, specialized packages. They're super sensitive. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. I think that's time. Thank you so much.